Hey guys, my name's Crystal Kenny, and I'm in love with creating. All things artistic and imagination involved. I'm an American girl who chased her creative dreams all the way to Paris, France, making a living using photography. This podcast takes you inside the stories of all the artsy folks I've met along the way and gives you that extra push to discover your creative gifts. The desire to create is deeply inside each and every one of us, and I give you the tools and inspiration to find a new way of living a more creative life. This is La Vie Creative, the podcast. Today on the show, I interview Amanda Bestor-Siegal. She wrote her very first book called The Caretakers, based on her time in France as an au pair. I knew Amanda our first year in France together, and it's so fun to see our au pair years come to life in her new novel. I can't wait to share her story with you guys. Enjoy the show. So welcome to the show, Amanda. It's so great to reconnect after all these years. We were au pairs together, and now I get to talk to you about your book about au pairs. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It is very exciting to talk to you as one of the people who was most present in my life during that time that inspired the book.
That crazy life of caring for other people's children and living in a foreign country, so many things. But I want to go back to the start. I mean, what originally brought you to France?
Well, so many things. But I think what I would say now, which I would not have said at the time because I didn't realize it really, was I think I was at a bit of a sort of crisis moment in my own life where I just really needed a reset, and I was 24, so this was 2014, and I was living in New York, and I had some history with France. My parents went to college there and lived there for many years when they were younger. So that's actually where they met. And I was born in the US, but sort of had this idea of France as the kind of genesis of my family. And I spoke French. And so I always knew I wanted to spend some time there. But I think the actual decision to move was very much fueled by this kind of desire to sort of escape from my life at the time. My mom passed away my final year of college, so when I was 21, and I think I in a lot of ways hadn't really dealt with it, and I didn't totally understand that that's what was going on. But by the time I was 24, I was really lost. I'd kind of lost interest in a lot of the ideas I had about my career and my life and what I wanted, and I kind of needed to just run away. And then there was also this flip side of it too, where I really did want to focus on writing in a way that I hadn't before. And I wasn't sure how to do that in my current life. So I think there was definitely some kind of romance in there about, I'm going to move to Paris and write, which is actually ironically not what happens at all. But yeah, that also was a big motivating factor. So when I moved there, I did work as an au pair. It was, partly just, it was actually an affordable way to do it, but also, I really did want to kind of immerse in the language and the culture, and I didn't want to just be, I wanted to feel like I had a sort of home base that was based in French and in France, and I really wanted to be immersed, and that just felt like the best gateway to, to whatever would come next, but ideally some kind of life in France that was a little more independent.
Yeah, and I know that so many of us come to Paris with these dreams and ideas of how great it's going to be and how we're going to have so much fun or become writers. I mean, what was the reality? Like, what actually happened when you landed and you became basically a nanny? I mean, did you write during that year, or what was some of the things that kind of surprised you once actually living here?
So I did not write at all that year. And, looking back, obviously, I have no regrets about that, because that year kind of formed the foundation of this book that I did end up writing about au pairs. But that first year, I was just really, I was very, for better or worse, I was very present in my life there. And so I was not writing, I wasn't analyzing too much. I was kind of just dealing with the absolute weirdness of, taking care of these children who I could barely speak to, living with my boss, essentially. It's kind of the situation of the au pair. You're living with your employers. Then, balancing that with these really intense friendships that I formed that year, with other au pairs and this kind of really international community of people who'd all come for very different reasons. Some of which, some of people who had similar stories to mine, where they really had some kind of breaking moment with their lives in their home countries, and so a lot of that year was kind of just me figuring out, attempting to figure out, I guess, like why I was there, why I was really there, what was going on. And I think what surprised me, which sounds so dumb, but it really was a shock to me, which is that I did not move and become a different person. And I think that ended up kind of being the basis for the book, was that sort of that realization that, and I think a lot of other people too, sort of had that fantasy of, I'm going to move to this other place and start over. And what I ended up finding is that I really moved through a really complicated wave of sort of first super, super, super ignoring grief and just being all into this like really wild life in France, taking care of these kids, and then starting to kind of move through those harder parts of myself. And so it was just surprising to me at the time that I didn't just move and become a writer and be this like happy, enlightened person who had never lost my mom and all of that. And that it was actually, I just brought myself with me and all of the ways that manifested. So, I think like living with a family too, as a kind of older au pair, and you experience this too as an older au pair, it's very weird to go back to living with a family when you're already, you've lived by yourself, you've had jobs, like you're a pretty independent person, and then to kind of go back to this sort of infantilizing experience of living in the suburbs in a little apartment with these kids, and where you're dependent on the family for so much, and it kind of puts you in this weird position of feeling like their child. And I think that brings up a lot of weird stuff around family, and that was something that I I think in some ways I had run away from the US to escape those kinds of dynamics or thoughts or memories, and I actually had sort of jumped into a situation that was primed to bring all of that stuff up, and to kind of have this sort of surrogate family with very different dynamics than my own. And so I just spent a lot of that year kind of thinking about all of this and just ruminating on it. I really did not I just didn't write any of it down until I was completely out of it. It was really in June, kind of at the end of the school year, where where the book even started to form.
So during the year, like you were finishing up, and is that when the book kind of came to your mind, like, I need to tell this story, like what it's like? Talk more about the book. Like, what is the book about? Is it kind of like semi-autobiography, or like talk about that a little bit?
It's definitely not autobiographical, but it is, I think it started as really the seed of it was me thinking about this idea of moving to another place with this idea that everything will change and be better, and that you'll be a different person, and then realizing that those expectations you put on that place are actually sort of doomed from the start, because really what you're doing is running away. You're not running to something, you're running from something. And so the characters that sort of at the end of au pair year, I started to really just focus on these different kind of au pairs, as sort of different. I think maybe at the beginning it was a little more like archetypes, and then they became more kind of formed and specific. But I was just thinking about the different reasons that people would move to France, the different reasons that people would, the different stories of au pairs I had heard, the different people I knew in that community, and I think it was my way of sort of trying to process my own reasons for moving. I don't think at that time I really did not understand. I was like in this perpetual state of like, why am I really here? Um, and and so the book was sort of a place to explore that. But yeah, I think for me, fiction is has always kind of been how I process the world, and it's because the characters aren't me, or the life events aren't mine, that I'm able to kind of have some distance and make sense of things in a way that if I was like just looking at my own life, it's too like it's too sharp. I can't really make it out. Um, so I think at the beginning it really was just about the au pairs. I was really, really thinking about these kind of what brings somebody to sort of cut off, um, all familiarity and relationships and home to escape and be someone else, and then what happens when you get there and realize that you're still you.
Yeah, and I mean, not even just au pairs. I mean, wouldn't you agree that Paris attracts a lot of kind of lost souls? I mean, not just artists.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Paris is so like it's just so romanticized, it's so idealized, and I think there is a lot of truth in it. Like there's so much beauty in that life. But it's also uh yeah, I think it is a destination for a lot of people who um I don't know, just want some kind of change or opening or expansion in themselves. Um and and I think yeah, the au pair experience is weird because it's so particular. It's such a specific kind of result when you move there. But I think yeah, part of the reason the book started as just about these au pairs, and then it became larger. It became about there's non-au pair points of view in the book as well, and it was partly because I was like, especially as I lived there longer and met more people who weren't au pairs, because I think when you're an au pair, you generally know a lot of au pairs because you have the
Which
same
is
pay, you have the same
schedule.
schedule. Yeah, exactly. And so as my own kind of circle in France expanded, I got a much more expansive idea of the kinds of people who came, and yeah, I think it's exactly what you said. It's not it's it's a place that I think people put a lot of pressure on. Um,
Hmm.
and it's such an interesting setting to me, in that kind of yeah, just the way that it's sort of put on a pedestal.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think it's a much different experience, obviously, living here versus visiting here. And I think a lot of people fantasize, oh, you're living my dream and everything. But at the end of the day, it is a pretty tough life, like to exist here and to make money and to do visas and dating and whatever and people's children. And as somebody who lived as an au pair and wrote about it, I mean, what is your final conclusion about being an au pair?
Um, it's I always say it's something I would never do again, and that I think everyone should do. Um, I I mean, I think it really was probably the most one of the most formative experiences of my life, and I can't imagine having moved to France in any other way. Like I think that that was what I needed in terms of kind of an entry point, and just getting to in sort of some of the ways I expected, like getting to immerse in the language. I mean, I did basically learn French from a 5-year-old, which I'm grateful for. And, and, but, but yeah, I think it just really shifts. Um, it's such a fraught power dynamic. And I think it kind of challenges so many like ideas we have about ourselves and about family and about work and home and I say everyone should do it. It's definitely not for everyone, but I I do think in terms of a sort of shake up experience, it was incredibly powerful for me. And it's hard too because au pairing is so it just depends so much on the specific people involved. So it's like, there are obviously horror stories, and plenty of those horror stories are in the book. And then there's people who have absolutely amazing relationships with their family and their kids, and it's like you can really run the gambit. But I think I don't know. I think if you are wanting to move to another country and you're under 30, you have to be, the right age. But that it is a really, really amazing way to start, and not because it's easy or fun all the time, but because it challenges you, and I mean, socially, it was like, I think you can probably speak to this too. Like, we made friends right away. I mean, for everyone who's like, wow, moving to another country sounds so scary. You don't know anyone. I've never had such an easy time making friends, and making friends from all over the world, because we're kind of stuck there together in this in this like very kind of specific job with specific hours and very little money, and we just kind
Yeah.
of am together.
I think that was like my main goal as soon as I landed in France. I was like, I gotta make friends because like you
Yeah.
felt so isolated and you're like, oh crap, like my job, my life, everything's so complicated. I need somebody, you know? So and like you
Mhm.
said, we all kind of bond over the horrors of living here. So like it's kind of like even if you have nothing else in common, the fact that you moved to France, you automatically can make friends with anybody.
Yeah, well, and like again, like speaking to that kind of idealization of France, I think like a lot of people back home, especially in that first year, they'd be like, "Oh my God, you must be having the most amazing time." Like they absolutely could not conceive that anything was difficult. And so that was
Yeah.
another why that au pair community became so like crucial to my
Yeah.
well-being, is just having people who got it, like who really understood without having to try to convince them that it's
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 not
tough.
perfect.
It's weird. Yeah, it's a weird experience. It's very destabilizing.
And did your family that you worked with, did they read your book?
So no, it hasn't been translated into French. So if that happens, maybe, but it's as long as it's in English, no. They do know that I was working on it, and it is something I was really, really careful about when I was writing, is not, there's no character in the book that's based on them. There's no one-to-one of anybody that, I know in France. It's sort of a big, like, kind of melting pot of all of these different stories and dynamics, and ultimately all the characters are made up. So yeah, I kind of respecting their privacy was really important to me, partly because I knew it was unlikely they'd be able to read it. So yeah, that's the answer to that.
I was curious because like obviously you're caring for people's children. It was funny because when I released the memoir of my last 10 years here, and the start of it is being an au pair, and I changed their names and I changed some things about them, but I didn't think they would read it. And then I got this text from the mother, and I had changed her name to Marie in the book. And she texted and she's like, "Hello, it's Marie." And I was like, "Oh no!"
Oh
Freaking
my God.
I was so scared.
Was she okay with it?
No, she was so sweet. I mean, I only read the first couple of words because when you get a text, you just get the first couple of words. And when I got those first couple of words, I was too scared to open the text.
Yeah, I
I,
can imagine.
I didn't open it for like a week, and I had a friend read it to me after a couple glasses of wine. I was like, I can't handle this because I didn't think they would read it. I didn't even think they paid attention to what I'd been doing. It's been 10 years, and
Yeah.
no, they pay attention. And she was sweet. She was like, "Yeah, I mean, we didn't know it was so hard. We're sorry." Like she was super
Oh,
nice about it. She's like, "Yeah, I bought it for my husband as a gift, and I opened it. And I just started reading a couple pages. I couldn't put it down." I was like, "Oh no."
God. That's like the best. I feel like that's the dream reaction. Like,
Yeah, I
oh,
was. I'm glad that you were smarter than me. You didn't put anybody in there.
well, it's harder with memoir to not.
So
Um,
take the
yeah, I mean,
book. Oh yeah.
oh no, that was just making me think about how I think when I think about my host family reading it, the thing that I do that does make me like, anxious about it is not so much that, because there are no characters that are them, but like more the fact that the au pairs in the book are so like bad at
Yeah.
their jobs, and like so kind of, and I think it's really, I mean, the sad truth is I think it's really accurate. Like I think that I mean, there's a lot of drinking, there's a lot of complaining about the children, there's a lot of like these really scruffy like young girls who have no idea what they're doing, and that's that I get sometimes I get comments from readers that are like, I would never hire, I can't believe like that these horrible people would be like charged with taking care of children. And it's like, well, they are every year. So I would worry about, I would just feel guilty, I guess, about that sort of revelation that like the people taking care of your children actually do have independent lives. And sometimes there's parts of that that are really not very pretty and not who you'd think, like, ideally, I want that kind of person taking care of my kid. But the truth is, like, we all did, and we all did a good job. It's just there's like a whole secret life there that I don't think, I just don't think host families are necessarily going to be aware of.
Yeah, I completely agree. And yeah, a lot of drinking. And
Yeah,
how does France influence your life today?
um, I don't know. It's funny. I think can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, good. So I think part of the reason I moved to France is I think there was a lot about the US that was pissing me off. And there was a lot about American culture that I was I was over it. And one of the things that France actually gave me that I was really not expecting was an appreciation for some things about American culture. Um, I, now that I live in the US again now, and it's been a few years, and um, there's just a lot that I'm really grateful for here, and a lot that feels like home in a way that I think growing up I didn't always quite feel at home. And having lived somewhere else, I actually feel like more just more comfortable in my own skin and like more aware of the things that do make me feel different, and things that I want to challenge here, but also things that I'm happy to have back after not having had them for a few years. Um, so
Can you give us
yeah,
examples, like Taco Bell or
Chipotle. No,
Chipotle?
like no, like I mean there's like a formality to French culture that I think um in the US, like people are just more laid back. And that's something that, like, that wasn't one of those things I'd thought about when I moved to France. I think when I moved to France, I was thinking much more about like work-life balance and sort of, people being more reserved. Like, I'm quite shy. And so in a lot of ways, Paris was much like fit me much more than like some places in the US where you have to be a sort of kind of outgoing that never felt natural to me. And so there were these other things that kind of snuck up on me, like, yeah, like being laid back. I mean, I walk around with shoes that are falling apart, bags that are ripped. Like, I'm really bad at being put together, which is something that in France is, people would stare at me a lot. And like, I would get just strangers on the subway, like, did you know your bag is ripped? And yep, very aware. I've been using it for 6 months. So yeah, I there's stuff like that where I feel much more kind of just comfortable with myself, and kind of some of those like scrappy ways, and but yeah, I think also just living anywhere kind of just gives you more perspective. Like, you don't take things for granted as much. Like, I can see, like, the ways Americans interact with each other, or the ways that we do things here, and instead of just thinking that's the way the world works, it's like, no, that's the way it works in the States. And there are other ways to be. And like, you can kind of take what you want and drop what doesn't feel good. And I think that's that kind of agency really came from living there.
Yeah, I think so too. Like, we have to kind of pick and choose what works for us, and be open to these kind of things. So, like you said, I think everyone should experience, maybe not being an au pair, maybe being an au pair, and then later, like, everyone should be a waiter.
Are you in the camp of like absolutely no one should be an au pair?
Yeah, I'm like, just never do it. No.
Don't do it.
No, I mean, obviously, I'm the same as you. Like, it inspired my life in so many ways, and it's put me where I am today. So I'm grateful, but also I would never do it again. So, like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's a weird thing. I'm sure your book will explain that better than we could, or I can. Um, and talk a little bit about, like, as a writer, like, what was one of the hardest parts of writing your book? Like, what did you really struggle with?
Um, well, I think the hardest, I mean, the hardest part for me, and I think this is difficult for a lot of people, is when you're writing a first book, you don't have anybody asking for it, waiting for it. Nobody's approved it. No one wants you to do it. Um, and and so it's this really weird leap of faith of like, I'm going to spend years toiling on this project that I have no idea if I'll even finish, let alone like sell it or find an agent or do anything with it. And then during that time, I've got a million jobs and like bosses that have no idea like why I'm insisting I need some time off or whatever. Like it's just this fight to kind of constantly like convince, like it was a fight for me to convince myself that it mattered and that I had the right to stand up for it and to fight for time to do it, because it just felt so like not even selfish but just like ridiculous, like unrealistic, just like
Mm-hmm.
how could you turn down, especially when you're like living that kind of like freelance life where, you know, in another country where it's like already limited by my visa in terms of how many hours I can work, and so it's this constant like just stress of figuring out how to make everything work, how to take on as much work as possible to pay for my life, but then needing to protect that writing time. I think that balance was really, really hard for me, and feeling like I had the right to do that, like that it wasn't awful if I turned down some paid work to do this thing that, you know, wasn't going to pay me, might never pay me. Um, I, at least for like young people living a certain kind of life, I think that's really hard to justify. So I think that, I mean, that was, there are parts of the actual writing of the book in terms of like craft that were hard, but I really think the hardest thing was this sort of like life balance of just how to actually fit it into my life in a way that, yeah, just worked like logistically. And I think that, I mean, that was the biggest lesson that I learned from writing it. And I'm so grateful because I know it's something a lot of writers struggle with. And I feel like I got this sort of really awful crash course in it just by virtue of, yeah, doing it in an environment that was, yeah, really not very conducive to having any free time.
Yeah, no, it's, I think that's one of the hardest parts of being a writer is like showing up every day. I was talking to another writer about his book the other day, and I was like, so why does everyone say they want to be a writer and then they don't do it? And he's like, because it's hard. Like, you have to show up, you have to do the time, you have to do the hard work every day. And that brings me to my next question. Like, why do you think we idolize authors so much? Like, I feel like we put writers on this pedestal, like they're kind of like demigods or something. And why do you think we do that? Why are we so obsessed with people who write books?
I think it's actually what you just said. Like I think the fact that so many people want to do it and don't do it. Um, I I mean, I don't know. I'm pretty like I'm one of those people who generally thinks that like everyone in the world is creative and like just kind of has it smashed out of them by their cultures and growing up. And I think like there are so many people who could be brilliant writers, who could write a book but just don't have that kind of support or like confidence to do it. And so I think the kind of idolization of authors is partly because I think it's something a lot of people have in them and that they just aren't, you know, for whatever reason aren't cultivating or aren't pursuing. And I don't think it's like envy or jealousy. I think it's more just like a sort of like how did you do that? And the like really boring answer is you just do it. Like there's nothing separating, I think, people who do it versus the people who don't, other than just
Showing.
like determination, yeah, tenacity, and being willing to, again, like take that leap of faith and do something, work really hard on something that may never, result in anything.
Mhm.
And so yeah, I don't know. That's my answer. I don't know. What do you think? That's a really interesting question.
Yeah, I mean, it's something I think about a lot too, because I mean, before I sat down to write, I was like, what right do I have to even think about being a writer? Like, why should I even consider that I could be an author? Like, that's such a big deal. It's not like you just wake up and become an author, you know? But I don't think I really acknowledged how much work it was and how much it was about showing up. It was more like, I don't know, I just had this idea of like writers being above me and above society in a lot of ways. So it's something we'd have to explore more. That might be like a personal thing too. Um,
Yeah.
but how do you define creativity?
Um, I yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, now that I'm thinking about it, I think of it as following curiosity. So I don't necessarily think creativity has to be linked to art per se, like, painting or photography or writing. I think we use it that way a lot, to kind of like refer to this quality that artists have. And I don't think it has to be that. Like, I think anyone can be creative even in like how they spend their day, or like how they organize their home, or what hobbies they pursue. Like, I do think creative living is a real thing, and it's not, again, it's like it doesn't have to be about artistic pursuit. I think it's just being open to following what you're curious about and taking risks, and kind of doing, like, being open to doing things that are sort of out of the ordinary, or that aren't following the kind of a kind of autopilot routine. So again, I think it's something everyone, I mean, if you look at kids, like, it's such a cliche, but it's true. Like, if you look at children, they're the most creative, like, beings. Like, that's where we all start. We're just making things up all the time and telling stories and drawing, um and I think that kind of, just, we're raised to sort of fit into this more rigid kind of lifestyle that kind of like cancels a lot of those impulses. But I think we all have it, and I just think it really comes down to just like being open and being, yeah, willing to take risks, willing to sort of pursue like what you're interested in without questioning it, without doubting it, just kind of seeing where things go, even if that's just like, oh, I'm kind of curious about, I don't know, doing trapeze. What if I go take a trapeze class, like, for no reason, just because I'm curious what that would feel like. Like, I think that's creativity.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And like you said, I think sometimes we associate creativity with like you have to be a painter or an author or something super artsy, but no, it's just like anything that you're curious about that's new, finding solutions, and I completely agree. And where can listeners connect with you online and pick up your book? The book's called The Caretakers, by the way, guys. You should definitely pick it up. Amazing work by Amanda. Her first book. We have to support our American artists as well. But where can people connect to and pick up the book?
Well, so the book is, you can get, just anywhere you get books. It's available through Little Brown in the UK. So if you live in France, that's going to be, probably you'll end up with the UK version. But they have it at the Red Wheelbarrow in Paris. They have it at the American Library of Paris, and then, yeah, you can just get it on, Amazon, bookshop.org, any independent bookstore. Even if they don't have it, you just ask them for it and they can order it for you. Um, and um, Oh, and there's an amazing audiobook. If you're an audiobook person, I'm just in love with, the narrator. Her name's Saskia Marveld. She's amazing, amazing. So that's on Audible if you're an audiobook person. But for connecting with me, I am on Instagram at Amanda Bestor-Siegal. I'm really, really bad at social media. Like, it's embarrassing. So yes, you can try to reach me there. But otherwise, I'm on my website, just amandabestorsiegel.com. You can send me messages through that, and I tend to see those more regularly.
Very cool. Well, congratulations on your first book. I know you worked really hard on it. And I can't wait to see what you'll do next and what your next book will be about.
Thank you. Yeah, and thank you for having me. I'm obsessed with this podcast. It's just like, speaking of creativity, I just want to walk around listening to it all day and feel inspired by all these people.
Thank you.
Thanks so much for tuning in to La Vie Creative. You can find more information on MissParisPhoto.com. And if you enjoyed this show, please feel free to share and spread the word for all my creative guests. We have the power to help them to keep doing what they love. See you next time.